Ms. Hutton?
Here.
Mr. Morgan?
Here.
Chair Trivett?
Here.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Here.
Mr. Carnifax?
Here. Next, we have approval of the minutes, and I think we're slowly catching up, if not caught up, with these. So is there a motion or any changes to the minutes?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Second.
Ms. Hutton?
Aye.
Mr. Morgan?
Aye.
Chair Trivett?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax?
Aye.
All right. Does anybody have any board member announcements?
I don't.
Okay, I only have one, and that is we have deployed a new recording mechanism in this room that allows us to do one-button recording so that we don't have a full staff back in the broadcast room. And so we're trying that out today. If the quality is okay, then that will be our process going forward for HTRFA meetings and a lot of the other meetings that happen in this room. But it definitely won't be as fancy as our city council meetings with multiple angles and switched sections. So it's like watching the meeting from space, I think. So we'll see how that goes. Next, we have reports, and the first item is financial report. Ms. Dameron?
Good afternoon. Looking at the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance as of February 28, the Historic Triangle Recreation Facility Authority has received $8.8 million in revenues and expended $41,230. That leaves a change in fund balance of $8.7 million. And looking at the balance sheet, we have $8.7 million in cash, a total fund balance of $8.7 million, and I have set aside an assignment for debt service, which consists of the city's contribution for debt service as well as the Tourism Alliance. So you have assigned fund balance of 7.5 and unassigned of 1.2 million, making up the $8.7 million in fund balance. That concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Does anybody have any question on Ms. Dameron? Great. Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Dameron. One thing that we're going to be doing in a future meeting is bringing to you a budget of some kind with line items, as it's time now that we have a little bit of money to do that. So.
Right. We're going to try to have that for April. And then we're also in the process of setting up accounts for the local government investment pool in order to increase our interest earnings.
Great. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda is the legal report.
But in there. So, legal report is, last week we met with Colonial Williamsburg Foundation to discuss terms and conditions of a potential lease. That's about it.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody have any questions for our legal team? All right. The next item on the agenda is open forum. If anybody would like to address the board, now is the chance to come forward. If you'll limit your comments to 5 minutes and give your name and address. Okay, I don't see anybody coming forward, so we'll close the open forum. And next on the item is the ever-popular closed session.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that the board Historic Triangle Recreation Facilities Authority convene in a closed meeting pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A 29 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended for the purpose of discussing a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, including interviews of bidders or offerers and the discussion of the terms or scope of such contract, where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body and its construction management proposals. Also, Section 2.2-37A 8, discussion of specific legal matters for legal advice, travel plans, and Section 2.2-3711A 3, acquisition of real property, lease with Colonial Williamsburg Foundation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Hutton?
Aye.
Mr. Morgan?
Aye.
Chair Trivett?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax?
Aye.
Okay, so we will adjourn for the closed session and come back to the open session shortly.
Ms. Hutton?
Aye.
Mr. Morgan?
Aye.
Chair Trivett?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, a motion to certify, I hereby move that each member certify to the best of their knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meetings requirement by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board.
Second. Ms. Hutton?
Aye.
Mr. Morgan?
Aye.
Ms. Chair Trivett?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax?
Aye.
Okay, next item on the agenda is under unfinished business, discussion and approval of the HTRFA travel plan for the review of comparable sports complexes and their offerings. Rick, did you want to just tell us a little bit about that?
So previously, we had talked about going to the track at New Balance to view the conversion turf system. At that time, when we were trying to schedule events, they were in the middle of indoor track and field season, so they weren't going to be rolling the system out. We've since heard back that on March 27th, they will be bringing the system out for the first time this year. And it's going to be kind of a big day. All the manufacturers and installers are going to be back there to test the system, to take it out, take it back in, take it out, take it back in. They're going to be doing a video production. So it's going to be a really great opportunity to kind of see it, be there with the people who installed it, who built it, and ask them questions. So we're proposing to travel that day to Boston to check out that facility. We also have a couple of backup dates in case that doesn't work, but the 27th will be a prime day to go.
Is that agreeable to the board? I think we can get some folks to tackle us. Great. Thanks, Rick. For those of us that can't go on the 27th, we may ask you to consider a future date for some of the others to go. All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is discussion and direction concerning the engagement of a construction management firm. Travis, do you want to talk to us about that one?
Good afternoon, Chair and Board of Directors. I've been tasked by the Board of Directors to get competitive proposals, including a bid from MVP Incorporated in regard to securing construction management services to help aid in the oversight of the contractual relationship with MEB and eventual construction of the regional sports complex projects. My findings were we reached out to 8 companies, including MVP. 2 of the companies did not return my call at all. 6 companies we spoke to. Of the 6 companies, 2 companies were not interested at all, but gave recommendations of other entities that we could go with. 2 of the companies were interested, but not on a full-time basis. They wanted to do more of a 2 or 3 day a week setup. 2 of the companies that we did talk to submitted bids, and they were more in line with what the Board of Directors is looking for. Of the 2 qualified bids, it's my recommendation to go with MVP Incorporated with the contract not to exceed $600,000.
Any questions or comments from the board? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion. I move that the authority authorize the chairman to negotiate and execute a contract with MVP for construction management services in an amount not to exceed $600,000, subject to final review by legal counsel.
Is there a second?
A question, was that design and construction services or? Yeah.
Construction management services, but for the period of design and construction.
Okay.
Second.
Ms. Hutton?
Aye.
Mr. Morgan?
Aye.
Chair Trivett?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax?
Aye.
All right, thanks, Travis. The last item on our agenda today is new business, and that's discussion and approval of a land lease for development pad 1 at the Colonial Williamsburg Visitor Center. I can kick this discussion off, and then if the legal team wants to add anything, that's great. We have, at this point, successfully, I think, negotiated some draft terms for a lease. with Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. The key provisions are consistent with what we've talked about as a board in terms of the lease agreements. We're going to be talking about 5 different development pads at the Colonial Williamsburg Visitor Center. This lease will allow us to begin leasing the development pad Site 1, which will house the sports center and some supporting uses, and then contemplates future use of the other 4 development pads, all in the same lease agreement. The term of the lease is 40 years with two 10-year term extensions and a lease amount of $220,000 per year. The key thing I think about this lease is that those lease terms don't start until we begin construction on the site. So at this point, I think anything the legal team would like to add or any questions from the board? Is there a motion?
Sir, Mr. Chair, I make a motion that the Historic Triangle Recreation Facilities Authority authorizes and approves the entering into of a lease of certain property near the Visitor Center from the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, and authorizes the chair of the authority to execute a ground lease agreement in substantially the form as that presented to the board, with such further modifications as are determined appropriate by the chair in consultation with counsel for the authority.
Is there a second?
Ms. Hutton? Aye. Mr. Morgan?
Aye.
Chair Trivett?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Carnifex?
Aye.
All right, that concludes our agenda for today. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Is there a second?
Ms. Hutton? Aye. Mr. Morgan?
Aye.
Chair Trivett?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Carnifex?
Aye.
Are adjourned.
Congratulations.